We're the spacemen sailing the cosmic bay. From Jupiter to Saturn we'll deliver our freight on our starship, sailing through the interplanetary strait. With a hardy crew and a cargo of dreams, through the nebula's mist we'll forge our own schemes. In the vastness of space where no man has been, we'll navigate, chart the unexplored galactic highway. Heave all maze upon the starry sea. We're the spacemen sailing through infinity. With our voices loud and our spirits free, we'll voyage across the celestial sea. Voyage across the celestial sea.
In the abyss of the cosmos we set sail. Through crimson skies our ship prevails. Across the stars a celestial flight, metal warriors bound by might. Ooh, yeah. In this realm of shadows darkness unfurls, a symphony of chaos, where planets swirl and nebula of fury untamed, sailing through the void where nothing's the same. We ride through the cosmos, a metal storm, defying gravity. Our spirits transform through supernovas and celestial clouds. Our stellar voyage forever in the skies.
Digging deep in the Martian soil, searching for that precious oil. With pickaxes and heavy hearts, we're the miners of the cosmic shore. On this barren land, we march as one, unearthing treasures under the sun. In the cratered plains where no one dreamt, we're the pioneers on this frontier we're sent. Oh, we mine on the red planet soil, drilling down, down, down for the treasures we toil. With grit and determination, we push ahead for Mars' hidden riches. We're truly bred. We're truly bred.
Greetings, ladies and gents, and welcome to the stream. There we go, that's a bit better. Hope everyone is doing well today. Slow the volume of this a little bit, so we're not competing. Because I will win in this competition. Good morning, James, Mai, Anthony, the Captain No Name, Samantha, Randy, Lord Volpex. Well, hope you're all doing well. Oh, I need to change my category on Twitch. I am not streaming a game. No, we're working.
Sailing through the cosmos, it's my final voyage. Leaving Earth behind, seeking stars to my homage in the depths of space.
All right, updated.
No one can hear, I'll sing my space shanty.
So, ridiculously enough, I got all the stuff for my backup server delivered. And nobody included any SATA cables for the hard drive. So now I need to wait 3 days for SATA cables. Because I need 6, and the local computer store doesn't have any, or has 1. And I don't even know what version it is. I think it's a SATA 1 cable. So that's great.
To the outer realms where my fate awaits.
Yes, definitely a horror. Good morning, Kenred and Kenneth. Fair enough. A lunch nap is always good. I just realized I forgot to shave. The horror. Thank you, Volpex. Healing's doing okay, Randy. The Icy Phoenix, good morning. So we're still recovering. Stamina is still going to take quite a while, but the cortisone that I'm on currently has slowed down the recovery a little bit. But I'm almost finished that, so we should be back up to normal recovery procedures next week. Antibiotics almost finished, so that's good. Fair enough. RimWorld is definitely a game that takes a while. Wistful Odin, good morning. No gameplay today, Icy Phoenix. We are doing work. Narrating. Maybe after. Maybe. Well, sleep well, Kenneth. Thank you for popping past. It's much appreciated. I do understand that it is a weird time for most of my American audience, which is most of my audience. But not a problem, Isaac. I mean, you can watch yesterday's VOD. I played RimWorld. But yes, exciting stuff. I think I'm only going to do one story today. Still got a lingering headache from yesterday. Well, Europe is mostly the same time as me. America is about 12 hours behind. So it's quite early for them. 8. I think most Americas would be between 12 and 4 o'clock in the morning. Yes, but if you're expecting a large audience or people to come and watch, then streaming at this time is not great. Busy looking at the HFY subreddit, and I don't think I've seen the amount of people online be this low ever. There's 187 people online on the HFY subreddit. Very strange. Very, very strange. I've finished and played StarCraft 2. I've finished and played StarCraft, all of them. StarCraft 2 and StarCraft 1 used to be my favorite game. So, when it came out, I killed it dead. Stellaris, not really my sort of game. Civilization's also not really my sort of game. Okay. So, on the website front, we have started development of the website. I say we. I've hired somebody to do it. Got servers and stuff. Currently, the we'll go code name is Plot Portal, but we'll see how that goes. The follower goal is for Twitch. So on Twitch, they call subscribers followers. Unfortunately, YouTube doesn't have APIs that allow you to pull this data. So you can't really do like goals. But this is the Twitch goal. Kriegsman 41, good morning. Hope you're doing well. Fair enough, fair enough. Painted eggs, awesome. But yeah, the timeline for the website is probably 3 months for beta. When we have beta, we'll open up to public for posting stories. So hopefully that'll work nicely. The Icy Phoenix, I've only started been streaming on Twitch for about a month. It's notoriously difficult to get people to change platforms. It is ridiculously difficult. So, it is the nature of the beast. It's difficult to get somebody to click a link to something, and it's even more difficult to get somebody to join another platform. X-Mammoth, thank you very much. I'm glad it helps. I'm glad you're enjoying the content. Hold on. Back of my shirt stuck in my chair. Good morning, Banana. Hopefully it was a fantastic time at the beach. Nice and shiny weather. Shiny. Nice weather. Nice temperature. Although, not too bright. You don't want to get sunburned. People have their favorite platforms. And people are lazy. It's nothing to do with change. It's just, why would I want to click on a link when I could just stay where I am? That's the gist of it. This is a custom-made jacket. It is a safari suit jacket in the style of, with some added military stuff on it. So the collar's different, and it's long sleeve instead of short sleeve. so yes. It is brown because your classic safari suits are khaki, which is a brownish color, brown-green. We went more on the brown side because green screen. Can't have anything green in my stuff. So that's why we went this way. The lappelettes are added, and so are the pockets. But if you're from Australia, South Africa, India, you've seen plenty of safari suits. If you've ever watched Crocodile Hunter, yes, Steve Irwin, he was always wearing a safari suit. Basically, yeah. I mean, I wanted it to be a bit militaristic, but I didn't want it to look like any current military uniform. So we just did custom. Good morning, Wolfos. I hope you're doing well. Yes, he was an awesome guy. Very excitable. Energy drink time. With energy, definitely. Yep, definitely. I never met him, but I don't think he must have come to South Africa. No, he did. I remember he did a show here. But there were lots of, not clones of him, but very similar people here in South Africa. So when I was in primary school, they used to go around to the schools and take animals. So they would bring lion cubs, snakes, like not black mambas, constrictor snakes, sort of animal awareness thing. So there would be a day where they would come past and everybody would go to the hall and they would do a presentation. And they would bring out the lion cubs and you could go pet the lion cubs. And then they would bring out the snakes and you can go pet the snakes, hold the snake if you want, ask any questions you wanted. Birds as well, some of the weird birds, the African hare, that sort of thing. It was pretty cool. Yes, so the stream overlay, this one, is a combined chat, so it's not going to show any emojis. Wow. Well, this has got no calories in it, or hardly any calories. 13 kilojoules. It's not even 4 calories. It's caffeine with weird tasting water, basically, and fizziness. I used to own a couple snakes, so I'm not too worried about them. Always loved them. I mean, as kids, we used to go hunt spiders. And there would be like black widows, baboon spiders, sac spiders, golden orb weavers, that sort of thing. It also depends on the snake. I mean, I'm not going to handle a boom slung or a king cobra. Those things will kill you. Yeah, black widows are common here. Plenty of black widows. Okay, we don't have rattlesnakes, but we got some pretty nasty snakes here. I mean, I grew up in the city, so I used to go to the Veld, which is open fields, kinda, and play with animals. So we didn't have much snakes in the local area because they would have been pushed out because of the city. But spiders, oh, we used to, all different types of spiders. Sac spider is ridiculously poisonous. It's more poisonous than a black widow, as far as I remember, but I could be wrong. Orb weavers aren't too bad. Baboon spiders are cool because they're a tarantula. So, I mean, South Africa is not quite as bad as Australia or Africa, Southern Africa, but we do have our fair share of dangerous stuff. And, I mean, also America. You're more deserty areas will have mean things. Mean things. Australia just takes that and cranks it up to 14. Biggest animal I think I could beat with a long stick would be a human. Would be my guess. No, 14 out of 5, definitely. Well, America might have the biggest mosquito in the world, but Africa has the most dangerous mosquito. That would be malaria. Thankfully, we don't really get malaria where I am. If you head more north, you get it. Sort of in between Central Africa and Southern Africa, not South Africa. It's where it starts. And there's more of your tropically sort of areas that has it. But we do have another one called a Tutsi fly, which gives you sleeping sickness. It means if it stings you, you go into a coma and die. Fun stuff. Although not nearly as common as it used to be. Yes, Florida mosquitoes are a state bird. Damn, I like that. Good morning, Samantha. Hope you're doing well. Right. It's Friday. I get to go play Magic tonight. Yes. I did okay in my tournament. I won. Was in the top 20 out of 40. So, I'm happy with that. Especially since I went with the janky meme deck. No, different type of Tootsie. It's TUT, not like a Tootsie Roll. Different language. It's, what is it? TUTSI, I think. TSE, TSE. That's how. which will probably be, with the TS is normally a clicky sound. So I'm pronouncing it in a very English way. Tsetse fly, tsetse is probably the more accurate way of saying it. Well, their main thing that they do serve is they're a food source for a lot of birds and bats. Good morning, Katini. Hope you're doing well. So, I mean, there is, I think, from an ecology point of view, circle of life and all that bullshit, mosquitoes do play a role. So, any species that predates mosquitoes will die out if you kill mosquitoes. Fair enough. Fair enough. All sorts of weird pronunciations. I mean, even tsetse would be probably the wrong pronunciation. It's closer to what it should be. And it's not good, Katini. I hope it clears up soon enough. Good morning, Donald. I hope you're doing well. Alright, time to get some work done. I've been goofing off for 2 days. Bad me. Bad me. Hold on, I wasn't in a place to record. So, I'm going to move you over here. Nope, don't want that open just yet. Move you over there. There we go. That's better. Awesome. That sounds quite nice, Katini. Well, I mean, you also get the garlic butter stuff, so you just smear that onto the sandwich. Works well. Fair enough, Donald, but it's mainly because of the cortisone and a migraine. So it wasn't like I was resting because I was resting. I was resting because I had a migraine, taking migraine medication and cortisone. So it dries me out horribly. So it affects the vocal cords quite badly. Alrighty. Story time. For those people that are new, if you want to enjoy the story in its completed state, you probably don't want to be around for this. Right now it's okay, but I will be recording the story later. So it'll be filled with mistakes and repeats and all of that stuff. But in this current phase, what we do is we go and we assign voices to each line, well, each paragraph and character, so that when I do narrate it, I can just look at the code and know which voice I need to use. We are currently at 24 voices that I have access to. These are base voices, rather than complete voices, which means that I could do variations of certain voices. M1 is just my normal narration voice, and then we take it from there. Oh, my neck is stiff as all hell. Okay. I think we're gonna do I don't know. Female voice. We'll go with 1, I suppose. And 1. Good morning, Deuce. I hope you're doing well. Awesome. Ye old pixel art. Hey, keeps you busy, keeps you entertained. Nothing wrong with it. It's not F1. We want F2. What have we got here? F3. Slow and old. And it's not. It's the description I use. So it would be something like this. Generally, the older the person, the slower you want to speak. What am I doing? Okay. This is C1. Fair enough, Gollinipper. That sounds not fun, really. M1. F3. M1. C1? C1. F3. Who's Ellie? Okay. Changing the character name to an abbreviation when it's not in speech. F3. M1. C1. Before the surgery, I didn't do this, mainly because on a day-to-day basis, my voice wasn't consistent enough to do this. So I just, every day, just worked with whatever voices were functional in my vocal box that day. That's why you see some voices disappear for a week or two. It's because I couldn't do them, because of the inconsistency in my voice. But since the surgery, I've got a lot more consistency, so now we can assign them codes and then just consistently hit those voices. I hope you have a wonderful sleep, Deuce. Cheers, Icy Phoenix. Thank you for popping past. depends. If it's like lunch, peanut butter and jam sandwich, which I shouldn't have, but I still like them. For dinner, neither here nor there. Donuts for every meal, obviously. I think this is F3. Oh, yeah. Mince is good. So, one of the ones we used to do is you take mince and you put grated cheese on it, and you get cheesy mince, or ground beef. It's quite nice. You flavor the mince with something like a brown onion, and get a nice contrast. But you need a cheddar for that. So you need a strongish flavor. M2? Through 10. We'll go with 10. I liked it as a meal because it's pretty easy to cook. You obviously cook the mince in your brown onion, and then near the end you put grated cheese on top and then smoosh it about. And you get nice cheesy mince. Or, you know, an early heart attack, whichever you prefer. It's a lot of cheese. Well, as one of the lazy meals I used to cook. And then the other one was sort of my version of use this term very, very loosely, is a bolognese. So you take a can of beans, tomato sauce, onion, and ground mince. Mix them all together. Well, cook the mince first. And then put on pasta. Add tomato paste or sauce to your liking. And away you go. Beans thickens it up. Also adds a bit of that tomatoey flavor because I use canned beans. Canned, what do you call it? Baked beans. Yeah, canned baked beans. Okay, so this is 4, 5. Thank you very much for the gifted sub, Brian. It's very much appreciated. This is actually M6. Hi, I could do soup, bread, and 'tis how. Knock. 6. I think it's written supposed to be Scottish. M1. Good morning, Brian. Good morning, Feldemar. Hope you're doing well. Mid-morning. 10. And 10. M6. M6. Coffee or energy drinks, pretty much all I ever drink. Well, and water. Tons of freaking water. Before I started this whole YouTube thing, I barely drank water. Now, I drink too much. But it goes with the times. You gotta do what you gotta do. M6. Not a problem, Kriegsman. Not a problem. I do understand the need for some tattoos, some ink. So, hopefully it goes well. And you get exactly what you want. Fair enough. But, I mean, any citrus will set off my acid reflux, so it means I can't drink most fruit juices. And then lemon as well would also set off the acid reflux. So we've got these effervescent pills. That's caffeine plus some other stuff that I just put into the water just to give it any flavor other than water. Seems to work nicely. Thank you, Feldemar, for the kind words. Yeah. So, thankfully, after 2 years of trial and error, we've got the acid reflux pretty much nailed down between diet and medication, so it doesn't affect me too much. Some days it still just rears its head just to remind me it's there. But for the most part, we've got it under control. We've being me and the doctor. I'd say my American accent isn't quite up to where I want it to be. I also, I think, need an Australian accent. I'd need to put some work into that. But I definitely want to get a stronger American accent. Well, I think we didn't really have fresh fruit juice growing up, so I never got the taste for it as a kid. I grew up in the 80s, so sugar was the name of the game. And then by the time fruit juice was a thing, really, it would just give me heartburn. Massive heartburn. So I just stayed away from it. Well, it's the same as saying any other accent. You can say British accent, but that means a whole bunch of things. I've been working on it, so it's a bit more comfortable than it was. But it does break quite easily between American and then my normal voice. So that's just a practice thing. M6. And the other thing is accents they're all going to be pseudo accents because people need to understand them. So you can't go full Scottish, you can't go full Irish, you can't go full Cockney because most people wouldn't understand it. So you need to go sort of like pseudo, like a little bit, just, you know, a pinch into the water, just drizzle it down. A diluted accent. Not really. The only impersonation that I kind of do is Jonathan Hurt. But it's a very bad impersonation, but he was the basis of the voice, so that's why it sounds like him. If you really should be doing something else with your life, we need to show the people that they need us. So, that's from V for Vendetta. Five. I think I'll go there. Yes, the War Doctor. Definitely one of my favorite doctors. My Londoner accent. Do you mean Cockney? Are you talking about this accent? Because this is not a Londoner accent. This is Cockney. Oh, it's a very separate kind of accent. The problem with doing impersonations is, depending on how you do it, can or be open you up to a lawsuit. That wouldn't be pretending to be the person that you're imitating. So I just avoid that. Yeah. So they speak with a kind of Cockney accent, which comes from Warcraft, I think. They also, it's a bit of a Cockney. So this is not the way that most people speak. It's kind of specific parts of England where they speak like this. I mean, you've got Scouse, you've got Cockney, you've got just so many sub-accents. Rhyming slang, which I have no idea how that works. But for the sake of voice acting or narrating, I just need to do enough that you can hear that it's a different accent. Yes. Freddy from Dungeon Life. I tend to give all orcs that accent because of Warcraft. Alright, job's done. No. The problem was, we had it here in South Africa. Somebody could do a perfect Sean Connery voice, and they did an advert for a whiskey. Not Sean Connery, the guy does the accent, and he did it as Sean Connery. And no way did they say that it's not Sean Connery. So people are like, oh, Sean Connery is promoting this whiskey, so it must be good. And they went out and bought it, when it wasn't actually Sean Connery, it was some guy. So that's why it's there, especially if you're a more public figure, using your details to sell stuff. Fair enough, Craig, fair enough. Look, I mean, I've always had people pointing out my accent my whole life. So, I'm first generation South African. My dad is Cockney. My mom is Scottish. So, my accent is very weird, especially even for a South African. So, I grew up with the phrase, "You talk funny," imprinted into my brain. So here's an interesting thing. ABBA, the band, they couldn't speak English at all when they started. So their pronunciation was the perfect enunciation and pronunciation of words because they phonetically learnt it from a professional. That's why their singing is so on point with the accent. It's because they phonetically learnt the song from professionals. I have no idea who this is, so we'll just go with American accent. I think. This is 5. This is 6. This has got a lot of voices in this story. I think we're up to 10 voices in this story. 5 voices in this story. We're all over the place. Okay, so this was M10. I think. M6. M1. C1. Yeah, it very much depends. So in the corporate environment, it is bad to talk with your hands. It's a sign of aggression or something like that. So you learn to not speak with your hands as much as you can. And I think that just carries on through. Whereas tradesmen tend to talk with their hands because they tend to use their hands. In my experience, there's no actual science behind this. Fair enough, Brian. Science is interesting. To a point. Pop science. Yeah. Some weird stuff. But science is all about exploring everything, and unfortunately everything includes weird stuff. That's fair enough, Krigsman. I also think that as a tradesman, you normally talk more one-on-one versus one-on-more. So, there's that. F3. 1. C1. 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 No, C1, F3. 3. M10. M10. One. F3. F3. M10. M10. Thank you very much, Slow Motion, for popping past. It is appreciated. Oh, wrong button. There's a long story. F3. Not M3, F3. M10, C1, F3, M1, M10, M10, M1, M1, C1, F3, C1. Nope. F3, C1, M1, 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 F3, M10, M1, thank you very much for the subscription, for the 2 gifted subs. It is very much appreciated. We hit our goal. Good morning, Matty. Hope you're doing well. Right. Okay, so this is F1. Has this person spoken before? M10, M5, M10, almost there, M1, M1, M1. M1, M1, M10. C1, M10, M1, M10, M10, C1, M10, 10. C1. M10. C1, M10, C1, M1, 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 and I see the end. M1, M1. Okay. So I think we're done. It's quite a long story. What is that? Half an hour. Cool. It is my pleasure, Richard. I'm glad you are enjoying the content. Thank you for popping past. It's very much appreciated. Right, I'm going to go for my pre-story bathroom break. I shall be right back. Here's some... nope. Be right back. And some music. Alright. I shall be back momentarily.
Hoist the sails and let the wind guide our way. We're the spacemen sailing the cosmic bay. From Jupiter to Saturn we'll deliver our freight on our starship, sailing through the interplanetary strait. With a hardy crew and a cargo of dreams, through the nebula's mist we'll forge our own schemes. In the vastness of space where no man has been, we'll navigate, chart the unexplored galactic highway. Give home, mateys, upon the starry sea. We're the spacemen sailing through infinity. With our voices loud and our spirits free, we'll voyage across the celestial sea. Voyage across the celestial sea.
In the abyss of the cosmos we set sail. Through crimson skies our ship prevails. Across the stars a celestial flight, metal warriors bound by might. Ooh, yeah. In this realm of shadows darkness unfurls, a symphony of chaos, where planets whirl and nebula of fury untamed, sailing through the void where nothing's the same. We ride through the cosmos, a metal storm, defying gravity.
All right, back. No, I don't have the lyrics. But on the Discord, there I did post it, so you can download it. I mean, I might be able to pull up the lyrics if I went to the site and dug around a bit. Recording software initiated. Right, video recording. Streaming mode. Hold on, we're crashing. Are we crashing? Are we crashing? No. Okay. So for those of you new, you might wonder why there's a green screen, and I've taken my background away. The video software we use to edit the videos is much better at removing green screens than OBS. So we record like this. This will be in the video. And that's what happens. Yes. Well, recording the audio, video is not near a problem. Because I can just download the stream. If that ever happens. Not recording the audio is a big pain. But anyways. Onto the story. I shall not be responding to chat for the majority of this, so I'll see you when I'm done. Okay. Greetings, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to this latest edition of Tales from Outer Space, where I take stories from across the internet and read them for your entertainment. This particular story is called One Taken, One Gathered, written by My Name Means Bent Nose. One confirmed, one denied. The peoples of the world had their own gods. Dwarves, Ericklin, gnomes. The peoples of the world. Really? The peoples of the world had their own gods. Dwarves, Ericklin, gnomes, humans, and others, all races, had their own pantheons. Above those gods existed the highmost. The gods are the very elements of the world, one for each of the elements. Light and dark, fire and water, earth and wind, and a seventh for those people called unsown, who had it within them to become unspected, who had it within them to become expected to one, who had within them to become expected to one of the six. No. Who had it within them to become aspected to any of the six. Between the greater elemental gods and the lesser cultural gods existed a third set. These other gods, they had various titles. The all-gods, the cardinals, the duels, each god unique to no people, claiming their right to aspects universal to all peoples. They represented the best and worst of all those things. Furastasia, of fury and justice, Amobido, of lust and love, Superophance, of pride and arrogance, Lassus Factio, of sloth and satisfaction, Avaratius, of greed and charity, Amaravita, of envy and admiration, Gurdintia, of gluttony and prudence. Fancy names for fancy gods, but the common soul knew of them by the face they wore, such as Furistitia, being called rage, justice, hate, or passion, depending on what whim had taken it. Each incarnate has known by many names, with one exception. She possessed but two names. A black-robed lady, known both by her appearance and the masked. A black-robed lady, known both by her appearance and the masked. a black-robed lady. A black-robed lady known both by her appearance as the masked and by her function, death. It has long been known that children have a sensitivity beyond that of adults when faced with the strange. It is rare that an adult is able to maintain that sense of curiosity and wonder through their later years in the face of eking out a marginally comfortable existence. Pella didn't know her grandmother was such a person. Pella just knew that she loved the woman who never brushed off Pella's wild stories. That is why it went that way. When he walked past the window of the outermost house of the village, Pella found herself spooked. She might not have put it that way, but when she ducked out of a window, that was the thought that crossed her mind. That was the thought that crossed the mind of Pella's grandmother. Elodie couldn't let go, of course. She mustered her strength. "Come here, child. Do you see something?" Little Pella turned her head, looking at her beloved grandmother with wide eyes and patted across the floor. "No," Pella replied habitually. Elodie laughed weakly. "There is no one else here. There is no one else here, my child." Mustering what strength she could, she lifted an arm slowly from the bed and rested it on Pella's head. The little 8-year-old reached up with 2 arms and held her grandmother's wrinkled hand as it slid to Pella's cheek. Pella rested a third on the hand closest to her that remained on the bed. Ellie continued to smile at the child that wasn't truly of her blood, but had been a better granddaughter than she'd hoped for. "I saw a human with a raven on its shoulder," Pella whispered, and a mask on its outer shoulder." "Oh," Ellie responded, letting the word draw out gently. "Did it scare you?" Pella paused for a long moment as she thought about it. Her grandmother never made fun of Pella's true feelings, after all. Finally, she answered, "No, but you look so sad." A hint of a smile played across Elodie's face. Pella's missed a subtle look of realization in Elodie's eyes. "You have nothing to worry about from him, little Pella." Ellie let her hand fall to the bed. "Now, close the windows and see to your parents." "Okay," Pella replied. She padded over to the window to close the shutters against the chill wind of the late season and headed to the door. "See you later, Grandma." Pella had run off before Elodie could come out. Pella had run off before Elodie could form the words, but that didn't stop her from speaking them. "At least once more, I beg." The raven turned her head and called, a low sound drawn out for a moment. Corin turned his head to follow her line of sight. "Something to worry about, lady." The raven shook her head, followed a moment later by her shaking out her wings, giving no response to the question. Corin looked at the cluster of huts at the entrance of this little village. South Bend wasn't a big place by any stretch of the imagination, but a stopover between somewhere and absolutely nowhere. But then, he was just as likely to end up in either of those places. More than a few shutters closed at his passing. In some places, a tall, dark stranger might draw interested gazes, but with a raven on his shoulder and him all in black, far be it from any superstitious villagers to strike up a conversation with the man. The inn was up ahead, a small building for a small village. It looked to have a tavern on the front with a second story at the back for travelers and another building attached for the owners. The village was as busy as expected in midday. Children ran past him, laughing and waving sticks, backs laden with baskets full of forest bounty. The pinging of metal on metal rang out in the blacksmith here on his left. An elderly dwarven woman glanced sideways at him as she hung clothes out to dry on his right, the second set of arms shaking out a shirt. Most of the adults would be out seeing to crops. There was much to harvest after all. Corin arrived at the door with a glance upwards. A wind-bent tree with countless hanging branches decorated the sign hanging above the door. Just as he had been told by a passing stranger, he had been promised good food here. Corin looked forward to it. He pushed his way through the door, setting off a set of wooden chimes. and alerting the proprietor. "Oi!" a voice shouted out further in. "Give me a moment, sir. I'll be right there with you." A clatter of noise clearly told Corin the dishes were being cleaned. Corin walked into the Corin walked in to look over the public room. A handful of tables surrounded by squat, sturdy chairs. Only one equally sturdy and squat, wrinkly old man sat within the room, the dwarf napping in his seat while nursing a drink. The walls were decorated with antlers and more than a couple crude wood carvings of animals or scenery, almost certainly made during a long winter days. The room was dim, lit only from the open windows adjacent the entrance and sides of the room. The room was dim, lit only from the open windows adjacent the entrance and sides of the room. Further in was a bar in front of an open door into what was certainly the kitchen. Corin shared his travel pack, letting it hit the empty floor next to the entrance with a heavy thump. Then he walked to the bar to sit on the middle stool with a sigh. The tables he had walked past and the bar were smooth and clean, the only hint of mess being an empty plate in front of the napping old man. Well, a well-cared-for place that matched up well with Corin's other senses. Moments later, a squat old dwarf stepped out, a typical hill dwarf, an old man with proper head full of gnarled roots growing with the bright green leaves. He had stripped his root beard of leaves, however, a habit typical of dwarves who often cook. One set of thick hands perpetuated the eternal stereotype of barman everywhere of drying a cup he was holding onto with a cloth. His other set of arms he placed on the bar, his knuckles and wrist covering by patches of thick bark. "Well, I'm Knocker, the owner of this mule." "Well, I'm Knock, the owner of this wind-brent boilo. What can I do for you, human? Yeah, for a night, or maybe more." Just one night," Corin replied with a friendly tone, while laying a few coins on the bar. It was rare that he had a luxury to stay anywhere longer than that. "But I have heard good things on the road about your food. I don't suppose that you might have something on the go." I can do soup and bread for you this hour," Knock noted, picking up the coin and biting it before nodding. For more, it's gonna have to be later in the day. And your companion?" Knock gestured to Corin's raven with a hand palm up, not a twitch of suspicion in his face. Somewhat rare for a dwarf, but then Knock would see every traveller to visit this place, and not everyone feared what Corin was. "I understand. The lady and I can just share with," Corin replied. "I'm hoping for some good food, but I admit my stomach isn't feeling so juicy." "Ka!" Knock laughed. Well, if you're staying the night, the stair leads up to the rooms with another stair to the back." Knock turned and walked back to the kitchen. Well, get comfy and I'll get you a key and some soup." Corin settled in. "So, Knock," Corin yelled in a friendly tone to the dwarf as the gnarled old man left the site. "Anything interesting going on?" Nothing less was expected than the sharing of news. If he didn't ask Knock, the dwarf would ask him. They conversed until Knock returned with the promised items, and conversed afterwards as Corin ate. As Corin had hoped, the food was good. Halfway through the meal, a little dwarf girl with a wonderfully leafy braid of roots wound around her head ran in. She looked at Corin for a moment with nervous eyes that flitted back and forth. He didn't miss where the eyes landed. "Bella! Oh, Bella!" Nock called. "Come on, then. There's work for it to be done." "Yes, Papa." A few things went quite as ugly as the problem of inheritance. Grandmother Elodie had lived a very long life, but had only had the fortune to bear a single child. Unfortunately, that son of hers had failed to be anything other than a burden and a beast. While Elodie did her best to raise a good son, the early death of her husband had inflicted a great deal of damage on those plans. And her son had long been strange, with all the signs pointing to a dark future. The harassment and cruel pranks upon other children, the savaged and twisted bodies of dead animals. Arquette ran away from the little village, South Bend, determined to make something of himself in the capital. He had also stolen his father's sword and dagger, as well as a stash of coins on his way out. He returned decades later, destitute and damaged. The sullen, impatient, and cruel young man simply added bitter and old to the list of descriptors on his return. What Arquette found upon his return was an ailing mother who had declared her wealth to go to the innkeeper and his daughter. A mother who wouldn't even let him sleep in his old room. Conversations had been had over time. Nock and Elodie were more than willing to cede the house to Arquette, but Elodie would be handing many of her worldly goods over to Nock for the sake of Pele, and she would not tolerate Arquette in the house until she was no longer there. He would have to stay at the inn. Forget that Nock put Arquette up for no cost. Nothing less than everything that was his mother's would satisfy Arquette. Many were convinced that Arquette's anger and bitterness had driven Elodie to drink. To the brink of her end far faster than necessary. It was a difficult suggestion to deny. In truth, Elodie's love for little Pella soothed the old woman's soul. Elodie was simply at the end of the best life that she knew how to live. While Arquette was useless in many ways, he had at least proven himself as a possible hunter. But possible was not the same as successful, and on this day he returned empty-handed. His temper had long simmered since the day of his return to the village, and never settled. Long Arquette had depended on the drink to dampen his dark moods. And for the most part, it worked. But here, in South Bend, well, if he wanted to drink, he had to look at Nock. And he had to look at little Pella as she scurried about delivering food and taking dishes from patrons. Such was his mood that he didn't even notice the human garbed in a black with a raven on his shoulder that evening. Such was his mood that when the tavern closed for the night and Nock's wife shooed everyone out, Arquette followed the innkeeper and his daughter to what was supposed to be his house. Arquette's hand on his pocket. Such was his mood that he never noticed the one who followed him. But then there was something more involved in that case. Bella ran up first and put her hand on the door, but her papa's voice caused her to turn. "Well, if you're what you think you're doing tonight, then." She turned around to see old Arquette at the short path to the house, standing on the first flagstone, his dull grey roots and leafless head shifting slightly as he looked past her papa and at her. "I think that it's time that we do another chalk," Arquette replied, his voice low. Pella didn't like the look in his eyes, although his eyes were really anything but cold. "We're ready, Doctor, and we ain't..." We already talked, and we ain't gone to an agreement you liked yet, Papa replied, with annoyance as he turned. If you're willing to give ground, we could keep going in circles. Papa stepped forward, putting himself between Pella and Arquette. Then another person arrived, the human her Papa had been talking with a black coat, with a strange and motionless mask on one shoulder, with a raven with glittering eyes on his other. Well, Arquette replied, walking up to Papa, I think I have another point worth listening to. And what's that? Papa asked. Pella looked into the next yard. The neighbors were watching closely. Her Papa and Grandmama's son. She glanced further down the way and found more were watching, but no one was looking at the outsider. Well, what I've been thinking, Arquette said, slowly drawing out his words as he slowly stepped forward. Pella looked at the dark man, then heard him speak as he looked to the raven. This is the first. He unhooked the mask from his shoulder and held it over his face. She could see through the eye holes as he picked it up, but when he looked through it, she could see something. But when he looked through it, she could see nothing. Ah, so it's him. But does it have to be? The raven called. Pella knew that they were talking. No, Papa said harshly, his tone pulling Pella's stare away from the human. Her Papa stepped up and bumped against Arquette's chest, upper arms crossed, lower arms with hands on hips. You've been thinking all kinds of things, sir, and they are all words done. I ain't gonna consider talking with you, unless just say you're gonna give ground. Arquette moved suddenly, yet the human was quicker. The mask fell from his face, and the raven flew as the human rushed in like a blur of shadow. Suddenly, he was grappling with Arquette. Papa stumbled and fell to his butt, utterly surprised by the sudden scuffle. Now Pella was convinced no one had even noticed him. A human was no match in close quarters to the elf. A human was no match in close quarters for a dwarf. That's how it should have been. But just as quick as it had started, it was over. It was a soft sound from Arquette that ended the short fight. Ah! Such a simple sound. Corin stepped away. Arquette's upper arms were held up and away. His lower arms clutched the dagger in his stomach. What did you do, human? Papa shouted suddenly. Pella ran up and grabbed her Papa's closest hand. Yeah, they saved you, she whispered with fright, shivering as she hid her behind her father. Silence reigned as the dwarf named Nock finally looked at Arquette. Arquette stumbled back, then pulled the dagger from his gut, only for the blade to hit the stones with a clatter. Arquette looked up at the human, then just as suddenly his gaze snapped to another and his face twisted into an expression of utter fear, and he squealed. He left the blade where it lay as he scrambled back to his feet, stomach leaking blood. There it lay as he turned and ran, gasping and frantic. There it lay as he escaped into the dark of night. The dagger glinted with red and with green. No one spoke, their words frozen in the night. Then everyone realized the human was no longer there. Arquette was easy enough to track in his panic-fueled escape. When they finally found him, he lay dead and cold. Pella lay in Elodie's arms, crying softly. Ellie's labored breathing likely added to the child's distress. It's okay, Eddie said with care and love as she stroked the back of Pella's head, rustling the young leaves of Pella's braid. It's okay. A couple of hours had passed. Nock and his wife Ryan sat in the living room, having closed the door behind them so that Eddie could comfort the young Pella in peace. But Elodie still had a touch of curiosity left in her, and she was afraid for the Pella. But Elodie had a touch of curiosity left in her, and she was afraid for the Pella, who would soon have even fewer to talk to. What did you see, little Pella? Pella froze. Several moments passed, and then she lifted her head to look at Eddie with the tear-stained eyes. Eddie gathered her breath and spoke further. They told me of the man. Of what did you... They told me of the man, but what did you see? What did the rest see? They told me of the man, but what did you see? What did the rest not see? Pella wiped her face with a sleeve, clearing away tears and a little snot. She closed her eyes, ordering her thoughts like her grandma had always taught her. Finally, she opened her eyes. Now clear with concentration and will, she spoke. The human, he followed our cat here, but no one saw him, Pella replied with confidence. She trusted what she saw, and she knew Grandmama would believe it. He had a mask on his shoulder, and a mask no one else seemed to notice. He outed over his face, but when he put it on, I couldn't see his eyes. Did the mask change? Elodie asked. Not yet, Pella replied. Not yet. At first, the mask was blank and had no expression. Eddie nodded her understanding. It hadn't been time yet. Of course it wouldn't change. But then the human dropped it, and it vanished for a moment, and at the same time the raven flew away. But then the raven came back, but it wasn't a raven no more. Ah, the raven was missing the mask. Ah, the raven was wearing the mask, Elodie guessed. Yes, but it turned into something. It turned into smoke. That smoke got bigger until it looked like a human to a woman. But her mask was very angry, wasn't it? Pella's voice was very faint at the end. Angry, yeah, and sad. Elodie pulled Pella in for a reassuring hug. Even that was almost too much for her. She then turned and looked. Well then, what do you do to have to say? Well then, what did you have to say for yourself? She asked. Was it a split? Yes, he replied. I was given the luxury of a choice tonight. Bella jerked away, turning in surprise to see the man sitting at Eddie's small desk. The chair looked too small under his tall frame. Again, the raven sat on his right shoulder, and the mask hung off his left. Ah, good for Nock. It would be a tragedy for him to go so soon, Elodie replied softly. But no split for me. No, he replied. I am sorry. Sorry, Elodie said with a surprise, her voice rising slightly. Her laughter turned into hacking in all her health. Ill health. She took a moment to collect herself as Pella's head swiveled back and forth. Ah, forgive me, Eddie said softly. Well, of course. Grandmama, rest, child. I know I've scared you, but for him to visit me is an honor. May I know your name? The man looked out the window for a moment. There was a hint of light in the dark morning sky, his face flickering sickly with emotions. As he gathered himself. Ah, to see his concern, Elodie wondered if he was new to the role. He turned back. I am Corin. He turned to look at his raven, while reaching across himself to pull the mask off his shoulder as he stood. And this is Lady Charisse. And this is Lady Charisse. Bella watched nervously, naturally afraid of the woman and the angry mask. Corin held up the mask, passing it in front of the raven and Charisse, while stepping to his left. The raven disappeared in a cloud of smoke. That smoke billowed out and coalesced into a feminine figure robed in black. The mask shifted, not to rage as Pella expected, but to a soft grief and gentle love. Excuse me. Grandmama? Pella asked again, clearly afraid. At rest, my child, Eddie said, mustering the last of her strength for one last hug, pulling Pella to her chest. The masked lady has come for me, and your face is full of love. What? Pella cried after her adopted grandmother explained. No, be at rest, my beloved Pella. It is time that I go with love and grace. No, Pella cried weakly into Ellie's chest, hiding her face from the truth. Corin looked to his Lady Charisse. She waited patiently. Pella cried in Elodie's arms, her shoulders shaking as she cried herself out, until finally she let go. Bella stood back, touching her grandmama's cheek one last time. Ellie wiped away the last of Pella's tears, or at least the last that she would see, then looked at Corin. Only human advocates of the vessel. Only human advocates of the vessel are given to making a choice. Uncooperative younglings, right to the end. Well, sometimes it is better that way, Corin replied, a little indignant. The lady leaned slightly, stretched out a hand, pale, cold flesh, and touched Ellie's cheek. The old woman sighed. Oh, so warm, and breathed her last. You won't stay? Asked. You won't stay? Knock. You won't stay? Knock asked quietly. It's been a difficult night, and you still got my gratitude. No, as I said, I was only here for a day. I really do have to go places. I really do have places to be. Very well then, safe travels, good man. Corin shifted the pack for comfort, and Lady Cherise squawked and fluttered her wings to balance. I appreciate it. It has been a pleasure. The human stepped out, not expecting to see Knock again, or at least for quite some time. He stepped out to the somber morning, many still in mourning for the loss of the cherished elder, a feeling he knew all too well. Quietly, respectfully, he walked back the way that he had come, passing the houses and somber villages, passing a house now entirely empty of life and heading down a path. He had many days ahead of him. The forest was thick along the path, but there was nothing new to him. At the intersection that split off the path to the village of the South Bend, he found a small girl resting against a tree, her eyes red from crying, but silent for now. And as soon as she saw him, Pella climbed to her feet and stared at him. He stood in front of her, standing at the path. He traded somber looks with a tiny girl standing within the shadow of a tree much taller than him. A slight wind rustled the leaves of the tree and the leaves on her head. Corin smiled, friendly but sad, and spoke. Do you know, little Pella, why ravens are the symbol of the vessel? No, Pella whispered softly, watching with sharp eyes. Many think that it is because they are scavengers that eat refuse and the fallen. Jerry squawked rudely at him and shook her tail. Corin smiled again and continued. But that's far from the whole truth. Pella didn't respond. The other reason is because ravens and their smaller cousins, the crows, they aren't just scavengers. They're birds. They aren't just scavengers. These birds find the jewels, the shining treasure, and carry them off. Corin reached up, and his lady leaned into his neck scritch. Corin looked at his companion, his smile turning soft. Just as the vessel finds shining souls to deliver them safely to the next life.
My grandmama, she's happy now.
I don't know, but she lived as good a life as she could, Corin replied. And I think you were all the reward she ever hoped for. Pella had one last question. She screwed up her face and concentrated hard on her words to overcome her natural accent.
Why, Cherise?
Corin sighed. He reached up and cupped the raven's side, putting the blackbird to his cheek. Because this is my beloved Lady Cherise, as a good woman as I've ever known. She's my love, a woman I was unable to give up to my bitter end. The raven squawked in complaint, finally, and wiggled free to jump on his head. That's how we were chosen, really. The true disciples, the advocates of the masked. We are those who simply wouldn't accept, until a deal was struck.
Are all ravens? Are all vessels ravens?
Well, no, but they are the most common.
Oh.
Pella didn't say anything more, but her shoulders drooped, and she leaned back against the tree. Corin looked at her for a moment, but with her curiosity satisfied, Pella had nothing more to say. Corin nodded, turned, and continued down the path. Pella may have been a young girl, but she wasn't ignorant of the stories. People passed on to the next life all the time, and all over the place. How could the masked one be everywhere to collect those unfortunate souls? Well, The masked one had help, advocates and vessels, roaming the world to collect the newly departed. The masks they wore a symbol of their duty and of their god. To the living, the mask showed a blank white face, void of expression. To those on the cusp, the mask reflected the worth of the life coming to an end. Pella watched the human walk, death riding his shoulder. Watched until he was long out of sight. It would be a much longer time before she admitted that she had seen the vessel of the masked, the god of death. That she had seen the mask filled with wrath. That she had seen the mask filled with wrath for a soul turned evil. That she had witnessed the mask of grace for a soul that was truly good. All brought into her life by a human with a smile that was a mask of its own. End of story. All right. Done. Let me just catch up with chat. We'll go to working mode number 2. Right, let me catch up. And drink something. It's a little bit parched. Good morning, Kandaria and Red Vex. Hope you both are doing well. Fair enough, Red Vex. Fair enough. Squirrel! Everybody has their own narration style. If everybody had the same narration style, it would be boring, Captain. Some people like my narration style, some people don't. But that's awesome. I find, not so much anymore, but the horror narrators, they're kind of locked into a style. But even then, there's differences between them. You just find what you like and narrate the way you want. Yeah. No, I mean, it just takes time to edit through and remove mistakes. Look, doing a one-for-one story, which means reading every single word perfectly the first time, is impossible. It's just the way it is. I'm pretty efficient at what I do, even with all these mistakes. A new narrator will take maybe 10 or 8 hours to narrate 1 hour's content, whereas I take 2 or 3 hours to narrate 1 hour's content. Yeah, it was some of the grammar is just a bit weird. So narrating is a lot about following the flow and then also being sort of a predictive algorithm in your head. So whenever the flow is messed with or the words aren't what you're expecting, it makes it more difficult to read. That's why it's easier for a series. Because by the time you get to like chapter 10, you know how the author writes, how the characters speak, and the pacing and all of that. So it makes it easier to read. Whereas one-shots, each author is different, so they might be using different grammar. which is not necessarily incorrect grammar, but it's just not what I'm used to, and I'll just make it a bit more difficult. Yeah, probably. My wife doesn't like to be recorded, so it'll probably be normal. I mean, you have to listen to the whole thing slowly and then chop out all the mistakes. Good morning, Nigel. Hope you're doing well. That's good, Redbacks. My dog is not happy today. So, I think I spoke about this last week. The neighbors at the back of the house, they're extending the wall from 5 foot to 7 foot. But it's paneled walling, concrete panels. It's got a very specific name. So it's not an easy process. You need to rebuild structures and stuff. So they've been working on that wall the whole day. And he's worked himself into a bit of a huff. I mean, it's fair enough. There's lots of strange noises and people around. So we ended up giving him a calmies just to mellow him out a bit. So he's sleeping somewhere, following my wife around, protecting her by following her. Awesome, Nigel. That's the one you were busy with. Oh, obviously, I was busy with a couple days ago. Yeah. I mean, I used to do everything myself for the first 2-3 years of the channel. I did it all myself. I was working 16 hours a day, 7 days a week. I spent an hour with my wife every day. We made a deal that we would sit and eat dinner together. There was no excuse not to do that. So I'd spend that time with my wife. And then, other than that, I was either working or sleeping for 3 years. And then she got retrenched, and I was like, okay, do you want to become my editor? And just split out the work. We can do more interesting stuff. I mean, my scrolling text sucked. Because I didn't have the time to sit and do it properly. Take those off because they're all blurry. So, yeah, she's 18 months, I think, been working as my editor. Fair enough, Nigel. Fair enough. And what's nice now is we've kind of got the flow going with work and all of that. I mean, it's to the point now where I don't actually know how the videos are edited because it's not my problem. So, you know, I use the extra bandwidth in my head to do other stuff. If I had to edit a video again, I could probably get it done, but nowhere near as efficiently as her. Well, yeah, I mean, the scrolling text is a lot more difficult than you would think. You know, there is no program that does it, so you have to do it manually. So what I was doing when I first started scrolling text is I would set the beginning and the text equal to each other, and then I'd scroll all the way to the bottom at the end so that the text would scroll for the whole video. And then every, I think, minute or minute and a half, I'd make an adjustment, which doesn't work. It works okay, but it's still... some sentences are faster, so the text needs to go faster. Some sentences are slower, so it needs to go slower. So with that, I couldn't spend as much time doing the scrolling text as I wanted to. And, I mean, that definitely made a big difference with her coming in, doing that. Okay, I think that's going to be the today. We're done. Yeah, I think we'll go there. We'll go here. Going to generate a background. Yeah, and that's half the fun of models, especially as a kid. I mean, if you build a model and you haven't stuck something to your finger, then you have truly built a model. You can think of it as like an artist signing their work. It's got your fingerprints embedded in it. Outer space in the future. Fair enough. That's pretty awesome. I love the fact that you can just choose the color scheme. Yeah, painting is... I mean, I tried getting into model painting and it just didn't work. Well, mainly because of two things. After hours of staring at small stuff, my vision just did not work. I couldn't focus on anything. And the second thing was my back always ended up trashed. Absolutely and utterly trashed. Yeah, I mean, as long as it pays something and you're enjoying it, it's great. Okay, that is the background done. Now we can do a thumbnail. Exciting stuff. So, I mean, this is another thing. So now my wife's doing the editing stuff. I can focus more on doing the thumbnails. I think the problem with charging per piece is gauging how long and how much material is going to cost. Whereas by hour, you can say, look, this is what I've done. You can show an hour to hour thing. Would be my 2 cents. Especially if you're going full custom, so custom coloring and stuff. So the client might not give you the correct information and you paint it wrong, or not wrong, but in a different way than they want. And then they'll go, yeah, but I want a different paint scheme. What are we doing? Crying little hill dwarf girl. Fair enough. Good morning, Postmatic. Hope you're doing well. Alrighty. Thumbnail time. Do a bit of a and then one of these. Then the rusty trusty. Yeah, doing as well as can be. Still recovering from the sinus infection. Fun and games. Fun and games. But the sinus infection is mostly over. It's just the cortisone that's still kicking my ass. Alright. There we go. Smooth that out. Fair enough. Sometimes something's not antique, it's just old. It reminds me of many, many years ago. many years ago. My grandmother passed away. And she left a whole bunch of coins. And there was a coin in the collection that was 150 years old at that time. So it's 180 years old now. And we found it like, oh, this is a very old coin. It was from England, Scotland, that area. So we're like, must be worth something. So my dad took it to a coin guy to get it appraised, and he's like, it's worth nothing. It's worth absolutely nothing. And my dad's like, okay, why? He's like, no, it's like the 1 cent piece of the time. It's just like there were so many of them, they're still around. It's not worth anything. So my dad got talking to the guys like, you'd be surprised how many people find this coin, and then they'll go out and buy a car, or they'll go out and buy a TV, They'll go out and buy something expensive because they think the coin is worth a lot of money before they go and get it appraised. Then they walk in, they get it appraised, and you say it's worth nothing, and they get angry at you. Well, that was interesting. So, not everything old is antique or worth a lot of money. Very much Postmatic, very much. Catchy phrase. Human Deathbringer. Deathbringer. Bringer of death. Itchy forehead. And there is our thumbnail done. Fun and games. Good morning, the Lawson. How are you doing? The author has signed a contract with Amazon, so I had to remove all of my recordings from the internet. If you want, they are all the author's one, and Amazon's audiobooks are on Amazon under the title Behold Humanity. So, if you want to listen, I do warn you that it is a TTS narration done by Amazon. So, there is that. Yeah. Forehead. I used to have pyrite. Yeah. It's one of those things. Look, any author that signs contracts and stuff, I'm happy for. Even if it does inconvenience me. Sorry, I'm looking for something to clean my glasses. This doesn't really clean them. Yeah, so any author that signs a contract, I'm always happy for. Got to get the bag when you can. I didn't know that it could be used as flint, but I do know if you try and melt it, it's poisonous. It releases poisonous gas. I think, yeah. I know pyrite, when you try and smelt it, kills you. Purple gas? Something like that. Keep picking up my glasses to put them on. Habits. Habits and habits. All right. So I'll be like every other Twitch streamer, which is we'll end one goal and start another. Got to keep those goalposts moving. Oh, that sounds dangerous. Forest fire in a pyrite mine. Although, why would you mine? Is there a practical use today for pyrite? Look, Manaderi, I can understand it. A conservative estimate is that Ralph's Bloodthorn would have to spend a minimum of $30,000 to narrate Behold Humanity with a person. Well, that is a lot of money. And that is a conservative estimate. That is for that is an intermediate narrator. It would be $30,000. At least. So, I can understand why he went with the AI. It doesn't cost him anything. But, yeah. Well, that would be ferrite stone, wouldn't it? Something happened? Ooh, a community gift sub. Thank you for the gifted sub, Postmatic. It is super duper extra appreciated. Awesome. Yeah, I might check that out. But, I mean, I don't see my life changing that much. I'm still going to be in a studio recording most of the time. But yeah. But, I mean, those rallies seem quite interesting. Me and my dad used to go, we did once, was Speedway. That's insane stuff. Very much appreciated, Postmatic. Very much appreciated. I didn't know you could buy gift cards for Twitch, but you learn something new every day. It is a dead soldier. It served its country valiantly, and it had an honorable death. America only. Well, I can understand why it would be America only. When you start going across international lines, you get into so much stuff. So much red tape. I mean, we've got several lighters and, I don't know, one of those big squares of matches for survival situation. Got an extra camp stove with butane inserts. I mean, not now, but at one point we had it wasn't a go bag, it was a go trunk. So we could pick up this trunk, sling it into the back of the car and go. And it would have, I think, a couple weeks worth of food, some camping stuff, sleeping bags, clothes, lighters, that sort of stuff. Money. And then we also kept our all of our documents in a sealed envelope that we could take with us. Good morning, Crusader. Hope you're doing well. Extra liquid. Fair enough. I think we do have an old lantern. We've got a paraffin lantern somewhere as well, but no paraffin for it, so doesn't really help. Power outages are a common thing. So we've got... Do I have one on my desk? Taking it off my desk. I think we've got 6 or 7 mag lights. Mag, whatever they're called. They're emergency lights. We got one on all, when the lights go out, we've got for the bathrooms and everything like that. And they charge off the wall because the power outages happen so often. Yeah. Gas stove, so we're not reliant on electricity to cook dinner. The only problem is if you forget to take food out of the freezer before load shedding, then you just end up with having to throw something together. Fair enough. Oh, that's interesting. But I think they've also they're busy testing a new type of battery. It's a non-lithium battery. Can't remember what it was. I think it was salt, something like that. Fair enough, Red Vex. Fair enough. I think people prepping, having something for a rainy day. People dismiss it as delusional stuff, like, oh my god, the world's going to end. But you run out of water for a week. There's no water for a week. We had that recently. You need to be able to do something. So, I mean, we've always got, I think, 100 liters of water for just flushing the toilets in case there's no water and drinkable water and stuff like that. So, my old neighborhood, so it's the one where we just sold the house, has just finished 2 months where they haven't had a single day without a 6-hour power outage or water outage. And sometimes both at the same time, because the local substation keeps getting burgled, broken, some fault, something like that. And because the substation doesn't work, the pumps to the reservoir don't work, so joy upon joy upon joy. Thankfully, this area hasn't had too many problems. We just had a broken water main and then no water for a week. Yeah. Not even just a hurricane, just a freak weather event. These things happen. So having some survival gear around, we call it emergency supplies, is, recommended. Oh my goodness. No. Stop yawning. Stop scratching my eye. Well, I mean, for the day-to-day power outages, we've got 2 UPSs. We've got a 3,000 kilowatt and a 2,000 kilowatt one. Not kilowatt, whatever. Megavolts. Kilowatt. What? Watts. So that's a day-to-day use. It lasts about 6 hours when there's no power, so when the power cuts, I can still work, which is not too much of a problem. We do have like a mini solar panel to charge phones and stuff if we need to go that far. Yeah, no, the solar our generators are quite expensive. I think in the modern day, in an emergency situation, as long as you've got a smartphone that's charged and connected to a network, you can do most of what you need to do. You can get online, you can speak to people, stuff like that. But problem we were having in some places in South Africa is the cost to keep cellular towers up. This is 4G, so the old towers. They all have either battery packs or generators inside. With the sheer amount of load shedding, the cell phone companies just stopped maintaining the emergency backups on the towers. So they would last an hour and then die. Or they wouldn't get fuel because it's just prohibitively expensive to keep them up and running for so long every day. So you'd go through dead spots all the time during load shedding, especially some of the longer ones. Yeah, we've got one somewhere. So this is my old cell phone. This is my emergency cell phone. This is a 10,000 milliamp battery. No, sorry, 20,000 milliamp battery on the back of this phone. It lasts 3 weeks. And you can use it as a hammer if you really want. The only reason I got a new phone is that it was doing some weird stuff, and if I put it in my pockets, I needed to wear a belt. So that was a bit inconvenient. That happens all the time, Em and Kira. They just replace it. In South Africa, I don't. It happens here. I don't know about anywhere else. They do it to substations. So when the load shedding happens, they'll break into a substation and they'll steal all the copper from inside the substation. And sometimes the power comes back on while they're doing that, and results happen. They do it on the trains. So they steal the overhead cables in the trains, and the power comes back on, and they're no longer stealing anything. So it is what it is. Yeah, fair enough. I mean, it's good to have a little bit of some backup. Well, there aren't any elephants anywhere near me. Well, something has to hold the cables up. So what you do is you select 2 pylons, you climb up the pylons, and you cut it on either side, and then you pull it. And you just pull the whole thing. Just connect it to a car or something, and or 20 guys just pulling. They do it with underground cables as well. What they do is they dig a hole under the cable on 2 sides, like 100 meters apart. They set a fire under it, so it'll trip the station because you got a fault. Then they back up a truck or a bucky tied to the tow bar, and they drive off, and it pulls the cable out from under the ground. So that's also a thing. I don't think it happens anymore because it's all stolen and it's not being maintained. But at one point, there was just happening on a weekly basis where they were having to clean up mistakes with high voltage electricity. I've personally seen the results of it. It's not fun. But this channel isn't dedicated to woe is me. No! It is dedicated to escapism. Escapism! But I think my voice is done for the day. Thank you all very much for... yeah, so I mean, that sort of theft here is very rampant. The house that I moved out of, we had to get somebody to house at the house. Otherwise, they would steal literally all the copper out of the house, even out of the walls. So it happens all the time here. So I had to pay somebody to be on the property 24/7 for 3 months, 5 months. Sorry, 5 months. Just so they wouldn't steal the pipes and copper. Good morning, Robert. I hope you're doing well. Yeah, I think I like science fiction and fantasy. You don't need either of those for it to be escapism. I like stories that lecture you, regardless of the genre. I think there are plenty of horror stories that are escapist as well. I mean, we all live in the real world. We don't need to be reminded about it constantly. So, if I can help somebody with a bit of escapism, I'm good. No, I mean, to be fair, too much of escapism is also a bad thing. But some days you just want to put on a thing and just not think about the world. And that's what I like this channel to be. Bah-ha-ha. Yeah. Well, I mean, you could strip everything from it. You'd be surprised at what you can steal, or what's worth something. With the old house, they stole the taps, and these weren't brass taps or anything. It's the inside taps, cheap taps, just whatever taps, and they stole those. They have no value. They're not. I think they're worth maybe, it's not copper, it's not brass or anything, but they stole them so they could sell them to somebody. Holy crap, my eyes are scratchy. Yeah, the real world is always a thing that needs to be ignored from time to time. So when I was growing up, my parents used to be like, no, it's time for a skopskit and donna. It's a Afrikaans thing, which means kick, shoot, and beat up. It's a movie that has no mental gymnastics to think about. It's just enjoyable action movie that just does stuff. And I think we need that. I think everybody needs a bit of that in their lives. Anyways, time to go. Thank you all for spending your day with me. I know it's a bit short today, but I'm still got a headache. Still struggling with the cortisone. So I'll be back on Sunday, hopefully better, because my cortisone should be finished. So hopefully. I thank you all for spending your time with me. It is very much appreciated. Hopefully I was able to entertain you, at least a little bit. Tonight's video will be up tonight, as per usual. And thank you all. For those that gifted subs and donations and all those fantastic things, thank you again. And I'll see you on Sunday. Goodbye.